Good morning, afternoon, evening. My name is Slendermancer here. Welcome back to the woods. And for today, I'm giving you all a deck profile of a deck that I think is pretty synonymous with this time of season because of the way that it plays. And that deck I'm talking about is going to be Mimighoul. So Mimighoul is a deck that is centered around giving your opponent monsters and flipping them up, causing them to activate their effects, which are all negative when they're flipped face up, and then they do a certain variety of things and then come to your board. Now, the thing about Mimighouls is it's never been meta relevant, unfortunately, and that has been due to it just not being too strong. Its end board's not too great. It's mainly floodgates, and some decks can just play through them. And like their whole gimmick kind of gets shut off by Dominus Impulse, Forbidden Droplet, and Diabellstar. The thing is with Dominus Impulse is all the Mimighouls are Earth monsters, so they cannot be activated if you activate Impulse from hand. So if your opponent goes and activates Impulse, they aren't forced to take the blow of what the Mimighouls do, because they don't get to activate their flip effects. And then the Droplet and Diabellstar can just send the ones you set to their field for cost, and then still just combo off, really. But outside of that, I mean, I think it's pretty decent. It has some pretty fun things you can do, especially with engines you can run with it. Unfortunately, you can't really run the Snake Eye engine anymore to make a free rank 1, but, well, with benefits, but it's okay. I never played that engine anyway. I played a different engine, which we'll get to in this profile. But without further ado, let's get into the card by card. So first, we have 3 Mimighoul Archfiend. So Archfiend's effects are, all the Mimighouls have this effect where you can special, except for one, have all the effects to special summon to your opponent's field and face down defense. And then some of them can summon themselves from hand and so on and so forth, but they all have negative effects when they're flip face up. So Archfiend's effect is, when this card is flip face up, it's mandatory, all of them are mandatory flip effects. Discard a card, your opponent draws a card, and give control of this card to your opponent. So if you set this to your opponent's field and they have to flip it face up, you can draw into potentially a hand trap or something else, and then they have to lose a card, and you get the body. He also, on summon, lets you flip up a card your opponent controls that's face on defense. So basically, he combos with your spell card and allows you, or any name really, and then allows you to flip it up, get their negative effect, and get another body to make a rank 1. But after that, we have 3 of your starter, which is Dragon. On summon, searches any Mimighoul spell trap, so it can search you into the field spell, into Maker, or Room, depending on what you have and what you don't have. Then his flip effect is destroy all face-up monsters you control, and then, except for like Mimighoul monsters, because it doesn't destroy himself. And then give control of this card to your opponent. Notice how it is your opponent's card effect. It's not you. It's like in a sense. So when your opponent activates it, it is their card effect, not yours. So effects like Chaos Angel or the Yugioh Incarnate are not protected because it is not your card effect. It's your opponent doing it to themselves. So it still gets past those protections. It's really funny in like White Forest matchups or into the Exodia matchup to get around that pesky protection. And then, of course, being your starter, it's very important. And then we have your best extender, which is Mimighoul Fairy. And then Fairy here says, if it's flip face up, your opponent can activate the effects of monsters special summon from their hand this turn. And then give control of this card to your opponent. If you control a Mimighoul monster, you can special summon this card from hand for free. So if you like whiff on your Maker and have to summon the Archfiend in your opponent's field, and you have this plus Dragon, you're still gonna make a rank 1 to kind of combo off still, and then kind of get the benefits from there. But that's not our only extender, right? Because we also have the Mimighoul Slime. So, and then Mimighoul Slime, its flip effect is an E-Tell. You get to summon any Mimighoul from your deck, and then give this, and then you get the card. His other effect is if your opponent controls more monsters than you, or if they control it face down, you can special summon him from hand. So he's another extender. He's just not as good as Fairy, because Fairy just does it if you control a Mimighoul. Your opponent has to either have a set monster or you control more monsters than you for you to summon Slime. So it's kind of more situational, whereas Fairy's just always live, basically. And then we have 2 Master, who has multiple different effects. He has protection if your opponent controls a face down or you control a Mimighoul monster, where he can't be destroyed by card effects, or battle. And then on summon, he searches for any Mimighoul monster, and then as a quick effect during your opponent's turn, he can Book of Tie you, which flips up any monster that's face on the field, which can be used for shenanigans if you're running more of a flip-centric build, like with Guard Dog or Morphine Jar and stuff like that. He's also your only level 4. He's the only one that cannot be special summoned to your opponent's field face down, which makes sense. He's the master. He doesn't want to do what everyone else does. And then we're running 1 armor, who on flip summon makes it so Mimighoul monsters cannot be destroyed by battle this turn. And then he can be special summoned if your opponent controls a face down monster. So he's the worst extender per se and doesn't really do much, but he is much better than Cerberus. And everything like that. And then that's it for the monsters from the Mimighouls. So next we have the spells. So we have 3 dungeon. Once per turn, you can add a Mimighoul monster from your deck or graveyard to your hand. Mimighoul monsters you control gain attack equal to their defense if they weren't special or normal summon this turn. So basically, when you set them to your opponent's field, they are forced to be flip face up. They gain attack and defense equal to their defense. So basically, you turn your armor into a 2100 attack monster. You turn master into 3000 attack. Your bodies get big off of this, and then it has a floodgate effect where your opponent cannot normal summon or attack with monsters special summoned while they control a face down monster. So they can't. So if you're facing a deck like Fluandereeze and you give them a set monster with the trap after they already flipped up your 1, they cannot normal summon or anything. You basically just FTK'd them. Very, very strong card. Very, very necessary to run at 3. And then you have Mimighoul Maker, your bread and butter. You reveal 2 flip monsters from your deck with different names. You randomly summon one to your opponent's field and face down defense and add 1 to your hand, and then you can special summon a Mimighoul monster from your hand. So you basically would be able to reveal Dragon and Archfiend to summon one to your opponent's field. If you summon the dragon to your opponent's field, you special summon the Archfiend, flip it up, and then have 2 bodies. Or you get the dragon, summon the dragon, add the field spell, get to the fairy to then have 2 level 1 to then continue going on from there. And then if your opponent special summons a monster, you can flip face up 1 face down monster your opponent controls to kind of force out the effects and everything like that. By banishing it, of course. And then I love this card. This is 1 of Charm. So Mimighoul Charm allows you to chain block your Mimighoul cards, your Mimighoul monsters that your opponent's activates, because under certain circumstances, like for example Slime and Archfiend, your opponent can ash themselves. This chain blocks it. What it does is up to twice per turn. It is it is once per chain. If a Mimighoul monster is flipped face up during the main phase, you get to randomly select a card from your opponent's extra deck and either special summon it, or if it cannot be special summoned, banish it from their extra deck. And basically meaning you can steal monsters from your opponent's extra deck or just rip them out. Very handy with the sub-engine that I play to kind of just wreak havoc on your opponent's extra deck and everything like that. Really fun. I really enjoy this card. Does it come up too often? No, but when it does, it is really funny. And then we run 2 room. You special summon any Mimighoul monster from your deck to either your opponent's field and face on defense, or to your field, and then you get a flip 1 monster on the field face down. Very handy after your opponent flipped up their Mimighouls already to kind of just summon 1 to their field so they're still under the dungeon lock effect. Or if you really need a dragon, like say you already stopped them from playing, and you can summon the dragon and then search follow up and everything like that. And then its great effect is you can banish it to target any amount of Mimighoul monsters you control and bounce them to your hand. So good when you go into Zeus and everything like that when you're clearing the board to kind of make sure you don't lose all the value of your monsters. Is searchable off thrust and everything like that as well. And then into the sub-engine, I am playing 3 Kashtira Unicorn. Works very well with Charm. So basically, this says that with Charm, you're ripping 3 cards from the extra deck. Usually, you can rip up to 3 cards from your extra deck per turn, minimum 2. Also, just free bodies are always nice, especially to link climb and everything like that. I really do like the Kashtira engine. We are running only 1 Fenrir. I don't like Fenrir nearly as much as I like Unicorn, because Unicorn rips from the extra deck, like I said. Really was synergistic, and Fenrir can search into your Unicorns, or it's just a really good body in general, but I would only play 1. We are at 40 cards. If you want to go above, you could definitely throw in more Fenrirs, or you could, if you really want to, you could cut 1 Unicorn for Fenrir. I just like the 3 and 1 rather than the 2 and 2. And then we're running 1 Wraith South, 1 Birth to kind of get to it. This is your target off Unicorn. Really fun. Sometimes the spell, banishing 3 spell traps face down can come up, especially into like Malice or something like that, especially if they're running Striker Engine. Can kind of lower the amount of spells in grave or get rid of those traps permanently so they don't even read it to gain the attack off the field spell, or just like banishing Fiendsmith cards and everything like that after they go tracked. If you have this up with Unicorn, and you have to activate Tracked. The Lori's Chainlink 1, this is Chainlink 2, Lori's not heading the field. You're just chilling, big chilling from there. And then you have, outside of this, that is it for the engine. So next we're going to have 1 Prosperity. You don't really care too much about the draw off Ars Fiend enough, and this can get you into your engines and the cards you need, or into hand traps. And your extra deck's pretty flexible, depending on what state you're in, to be able to just banish cards out from it, to be able to look at the top 6. And then running 2 talents. You make your opponent activate monster effects. You get a hand rip them pretty much all the time. So really insanely good card in the deck. Thrust is in the side, so really love talents in this deck. And then that's just like the non-engine for that's not hand traps. We are running some hand traps, so we are running 3 infinite impermanents. One of the best hand traps in the meta right now. Doesn't turn on talents or anything like that. Which is pretty prevalent actually, and it's not a monster that goes to grave to be called by. Imperm is very strong because you can hit Duo Drive, you can hit any of the Malice monsters, put them on Gotta Have the Trap card. I think I prefer this over Ash, which I know, Ash Blossom is a great card, but I do think this is a better hand trap right now. Speaking of Ash Blossom though, we are playing 3. Pretty standard in most decks, especially with Fire not running around anymore. You can't get heated on it. So it definitely grew up in value for me personally, because I really hated running this, ashing a Snake Eye player, and then just going, okay, Hita, make Princess, and still combo off anyway. It's very annoying to deal with, but I'm glad that that's kind of gone, so we can run it happily again. And then 2 Nibiru. Fun thing about Nibiru is it does not tribute face down monsters, so if you if your opponent doesn't really care about you sending monsters to their field, and they just still combo off through dungeon, or they have the out to dungeon, and they just don't decide to flip the monster face up, you nib them, their face down monster is still there, and their entire board is gone. But that's it for the main deck. Like I said, we are on 40 cards, and we're running the good old 8 hand traps. Could be more, could be less. I just like 8. I like those ones specifically here. So next we'll go into the extra deck. So in terms of Mimighoul extra deck monsters, we have 2 Giant and 2 Throne. I think 2 and 2 is perfect. Giant says on summon, search any Mimighoul card. And he says if your opponent controls a face down monster, your Mimighoul monsters can attack directly. With Dungeon, he does get to a whopping 3,300 attack. He also is your time card, because you can detach a card, material target cards on the field up to the number of face down monsters your opponent controls, pop them, and then burn your opponent for 1,000 for each. So you don't really need to run any other time card outside of it, especially because he is literally generic, which is why people ran the Snake Eye engine. Then running 2 Throne. There's no on summon effect, but you can detach 1 from him during the main phase to summon a master from your deck to kind of search and get everything like that. And then during the main phase, quick effect, you can equip him to a master to give him a bonus in attack, and bounce non-targeting cards from your opponent's field to the hand up to the number of materials he had when he equipped. Usually it's just 1, but in some instances can be a 2. But usually you go him and then him afterwards, because you'd rather get the search than this. But if you are very desperate for the master, you could just summon this instead of this. Personally, I do like Giant more, though. But that's it for the Mimighoul extra deck monsters. There's no other ones, so there's nothing else to really worry about or discuss on them. Let's go into the more generic stuff. So, since we are a rank 1 deck that can cheat out bodies really easily, we are running Nightingale, Fuko, Downard, and Zeus. I mean, Fuko is also useful in the sense that Tenpai is still running around somehow. Thanks, Konami. And thanks, Treff, for letting Tenpai exist still in this day and age. So it's good into that. And Lyrillus just for boop, boop, clear board. Your opponent can't really do much about it. And just very handy with that. And nothing much more to talk about. It's just a Zeus line. you know it, you love it or hate it. Zeus is here to stay. Then we are running one Typhon. If you get interrupted or your opponent has set up a really good board, you just summon any Mimighoul. Summon this, bounce something, attack over something else. Very, very good. Non-targeting as well. Just remember that your turn is over the moment that you summon this because you cannot special summon anymore, even to set monsters to your opponent's field. And then we have one Anima. All your monsters level 1. If your opponent doesn't respect this card, you can easily take advantage. You could also just banish it off the Prosperity to kind of, if you know you won't need it or if you're going first. But very good card, especially if your opponent doesn't respect it. And then we have the IP, and I'll show you the targets with IP alongside it. So you have Barricade Board Blocker, which I'll go into, and Nightmare Unicorn. So the reason I'm not running SP is for a few reasons. First off, Banishing's not too good right now into some of the decks, whereas Shuffling Back is really good. So like say you're facing Malice and you have IP plus a body on field to kind of as your interruption, right? Would you rather make SP and banish their monster where they can immediately bring back, or would you rather make Unicorn, discard the card you have in hand for spare, and shuffle it into deck so they don't even get the chance to summon it back, and they're down a body altogether? I think I'd prefer the Unicorn. And then I am running Barricade Board Blocker, which is handy if you have the IP up and a body, and your opponent has Harpy's Feather Duster. You can chain IP to go into Barricade Board to protect your field spell and charm from being destroyed because it says your face-up spells cannot be destroyed. Now, it doesn't protect your spell and your traps and everything like that, unfortunately, but you take what you can get, really. That's it for the IP lines. I am running Phoenix as well, but I don't really ever would want to summon that off of the IP unless I'm in very drastic situations. It's mainly there for floodgates that you can't get over, like Revelry of Warlords and stuff like that. If you can somehow get 2 feeds on the field, make this, blow up the floodgates, or just hitting like Skill Drain, because that still exists for some reason. If you have a way of outing this with a Skill Drain, very, very necessary, I think, and it's another fire to make for the access code that we are running as well. Speaking of which, here he is. Nothing much to say. He's an OTK tool. Very, very good. Has been good since he came out. Becomes 43 if you use Unicorn. Only becomes 53 if you use Unicorn. 43 if you use the just IP. Non-targeting pop, can't be responded to, and can banish himself if you're like I was saying, if you're under Skill Drain. You can't really use the Nightmare Phoenix. You could use this, however, banish itself for cost and pop the Skill Drain. You can't really get it back, and it is pretty expensive, but you got to do what you got to do out here. And the last card in our extra deck, nothing too special. Nightmare Griffin. It's a floodgate. You can set the Mimighoul monster to the zone that he points to force them to not be able to special summon and use the effects of it. Of any monsters outside of that Mimighoul monster, force them to use the Mimighoul first before anything else. And then, if you have room, you can then summon the Mimighoul monster to his zone to force your opponent out of using any special summon monster's effects. So they can't just go can't go search with X'd, but they can still aggregator it if you don't have any interruption for that. But that is it for the extra deck. Onto the side deck here, which I put to the side. We are running 3 Lancia. For Malice. Malice can be rough sometimes, and if you, especially their end board, but Lancia can kind of just turn skip them, as everybody knows. And then we have 3 Droll for rogue decks and everything like that. I feel like Droll should be somewhere in your deck no matter what. Otherwise, you're just asking to run into like Dark World or Gimmick Puppet FTK and just losing the game off that. Also really good into Fiendsmith decks, so if they start with like Engraver, you just Droll them, and then what are they going to do? Activate that tract? No, they can't. And then we're on 2 Shifter on the side. We're not main decking Shifter because of Malice and Raziel not caring too much, but it is there for decks that might, like if you face Rogue or anything like that, or like a Fiendsmith variant, it is very good. Nothing too much more to explain about that. And then we're running 3 Thrusts on the side. Like I said earlier, you can force your opponent to use monster effects, so you can use Thrust to get to any of your side deck options, which I'm running 1. You could run more and everything like that, or get you into room. or if you're going second, and you could use this to get into Duster or Talents or anything like that you need to, and search it. And then our targets for this, though, are going to be Duster and Mischief of the Gnomes. Really good into Ryzeal. Against, I don't own Artifact Sanctum, otherwise that would be in here as well in the sideboard for the Malice target. And Duster is your going second option for Thrust, outside of just Talent. So if you're facing a back row deck like Paleo, and they just go backjack effect after, like, to set something, you can just go Thrust into Duster and to blow up their back row, force them to use the trap that they just set. And then we're running 2 Xyz Encore. This could be anything else. I just am a fan of Xyz Encore. Could be evenly matched if you really wanted it to. Xyz Encore, good into breaking specifically the Ryzeal end board. Not really good into Malice, so it doesn't have too many uses and everything like that. But that is the list for my Mimighoul deck here. Let me know down below what you think. If you want to try Mimighoul or everything like that, if you've been experimenting with Mimighoul and have any different ideas, I would love to hear them. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. And leave any recommendations on anything you'd want me to potentially cover or make content about down below. I do play One Piece as well, so if you guys do want to see some One Piece, do feel free to comment it down below. So let me know, hey, put in some One Piece. What you been cooking down there for us? And thanks for watching.